The large meeting room buzzed with noise as creatures from 47 different worlds filled their seats. Some had 4 arms, others had scales instead of skin, and a few breathed different gases through special masks. Met every month to discuss trade, wars, and problems across the galaxy. Today felt like any other meeting to most of them. Lisa Martinez sat in the human section with her partner Jake Harrison. They had been coming to these meetings for 3 years now. Lisa was tall with dark hair pulled back in a neat style, was shorter with kind eyes that missed nothing. Both wore simple blue uniforms that marked them as Earth representatives. The humans always sat in the same spot. Row 15, seats 20 through 25. Not because they had to, but because no one else wanted to sit near them. The other species thought humans were too young, too emotional, and too weak to matter much in galactic politics. Chancellor Kethmer called the meeting to start. He was a Zephyrian, which meant he looked like a tall gray stick with too many joints. In his arms and legs, his voice sounded like wind blowing through metal pipes when he spoke the common galactic language. Today, we discussed the new mining rights in the Outer Rim, the Chancellor announced. The hegemony has presented a plan to extract rare metals from 12 worlds in that region. Trade Minister Volok stood up. He was from the hegemony, a species that looked like walking rocks with glowing red eyes. These worlds have valuable materials we need. The mining will create jobs and wealth for many species. Lisa raised her hand. The Chancellor looked annoyed but nodded at her. What about the people who already live on those worlds? Lisa asked. Our reports show that 6 of those planets have intelligent life. They are not advanced enough for space travel, but they have cities and art and families. Several species in the room made sounds that might have been laughter. Trade Minister Volak's red eyes glowed brighter, which meant he was either angry or amused. The humans worry about primitives again, Volak said. These creatures barely know how to make fire. They will not even notice our mining operations. Today. Will notice when their water becomes poison, Jake said quietly. They will notice when their food animals die from the chemicals. Chancellor Kethmer waved one of his long arms. The human perspective is interesting but not practical. These worlds will provide materials for hospitals, schools, and space stations. The needs of billions outweigh the concerns of a few thousand. Primitives. Lisa stood up completely now. Around the room, other species watched with the bored attention of people who had seen this argument many times before. We have seen this happen before, Lisa said. On Kepler 7, the mining killed everything in the oceans. On New Geneva, the acid rain from processing plants destroyed forests that were thousands of years old. Each time, you promise to be careful. Each time, the damage is worse than predicted. Each time, the humans complain about progress, said not. Ambassador Thekra of the Altarian Collective. She looked like a blue insect the size of a person, with compound eyes that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Perhaps humans should focus on simpler tasks. Cleaning space stations, moving cargo, work that matches your abilities. More sounds of amusement echoed through the chamber. Lisa felt Jake tense beside her, but his face remained calm. Learn not to show anger in these meetings. It only made the other species think humans were too emotional for serious discussions. We have other concerns about this plan. Lisa tried again. Yeah. The mining will require new shipping routes through the neutral zone that could start conflicts with species who use those trade paths. The humans see problems everywhere, Chancellor Kethmer said. Perhaps this is because your species is so young. You have only been in space for 200 years. We have been building galactic civilization for thousands of years before your world learned to make metal. Young species often lack wisdom, agreed Science Director Naleth of the Crystalline Consortium. His people look like walking jewels that sang instead of speaking in normal voices. Humans mean well, but they do not understand how galaxy-wide decisions must be made. Lisa looked around the room. 47 species, and most of them were nodding agreement or showing similar signs in their own body language. The humans had 3 votes out of more than 200 total council votes. Even when they made good points, it never mattered. What if we modify the mining plan? Lisa asked. We could extract materials from dead worlds instead. There are plenty of planets with no life that have the same rare metals. Dead worlds are harder to mine, Trade Minister Volok said. No atmosphere to help with processing. No water for cooling systems. Costs would be 3 times higher. The cost in lives could be much higher if we ignore the environmental impact, Jake said. There they go again, Chancellor Kethmer said to the room. Humans always worry about costs that might happen instead of benefits that will definitely happen. This is why your species struggles with practical decisions. Several species made their approval sounds. Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not anger, exactly. Something closer to understanding. Perhaps, said Cultural Minister Zexik of the Void Wanderers, humans would be more useful focusing on tasks better suited to their nature. Maintenance work is important. Waste management serves the galaxy well. These jobs require dedication but not complex thinking. The room buzzed with agreement. Lisa looked at Jake, who gave her a tiny nod. They had talked about this moment many times in private. They had hoped it would never come, but they had prepared for it anyway. Lisa gathered her data tablets and stood up. Jake did the same, his movements calm and efficient. Other humans in their delegation began packing their materials. What are you doing? Chancellor Kethmer asked. We understand our position now, Lisa said. Her voice was steady and clear. The Council has made it very obvious how you see humanity in our contributions. Where are you going? Asked Trade. Minister Volok. Home. Jake said simply. The humans walked toward the exit of the chamber. Their footsteps were quiet on the polished floor. Other species watched them go, but most seemed more curious than concerned. Lisa stopped at the large doors. That led out of the meeting room. She turned back to face the Council one more time. We will be returning to Earth immediately, she announced. Humanity's participation in Council affairs is finished. Will you return for next month's meeting? Chancellor Kethmer asked. No, Lisa said. We will not be returning. The Chancellor made a gesture that looked like a shrug if shrugs were performed by creatures with too many joints. Safe travels, he said. Perhaps in a few generations, humanity will be ready for real galactic citizenship. When you learn to think beyond your emotions and focus on practical matters, some species made agreement sounds. Others were already. Turning their attention back to the mining discussion, Lisa and Jake walked through the doors. The rest of the human delegation followed them. Behind them, the great chamber continued its business as if nothing important had happened. As they walked down the long hallway toward the docking bays, Jake spoke quietly. They have no idea what they just lost, he said. Lisa nodded. They will. The doors to the council chamber closed with a soft sound. Inside, Chancellor Kethmer was already calling for a vote on the mining rights. The humans were forgotten before. Their ship had even left the station. But in the quiet corridors of the station, Lisa Martinez was making the first of many calls that would change the galaxy forever. The real work was just beginning. 3 months passed after the humans left the council meeting. Most alien species had already forgotten about the quiet departure. They were too busy arguing about mining rights and trade, agreements to think about the missing humans. But small changes were happening across the galaxy. Changes that seemed normal at first. Dr. Amanda Foster packed her research equipment into metal boxes on Kepler Station. She had been studying alien plant diseases for 5 years. Her Altarian colleagues watched her work with confusion. You leaving? Asked Dr. Velter, her research partner. His blue insect features showed concern through rapid antenna movements. My contract is finished, Amanda said simply. I will not be renewing it. But your work on the grain fungus was almost complete. Without you, we cannot finish the cure. Amanda sealed the last box and picked up her travel bag, the Altarian. Science Collective has many smart researchers. You will find someone else. Dr. Veltar made a clicking sound that meant disagreement. But you understand the chemical processes better than anyone. The fungus only responds to treatments you developed. I have written detailed reports, Amanda said. Everything is in the station computer system. But as Dr. Veltar would discover later, the reports contain procedures without explaining why they worked. The humans had always shared their methods, but they had never explained the thinking behind their solutions. Amanda left Kepler Station on the next transport ship. Her replacement would be an Altarian scientist who had studied plant diseases for twice as long as Amanda had been alive. But somehow, the new researcher could not make the treatments work properly. Similar scenes played out on dozens of space stations across the galaxy. Captain Ryan Brooks finished loading his cargo ship with rare metals from Rigel Prime. The New Horizon had been making this run for 8 years. The Rigelian mine supervisor had grown used to seeing Ryan's friendliest face every month. Same time next month? The supervisor asked as Ryan signed the delivery papers. No, Ryan said. This is my last run to Rigel Prime. What? Why? Is there a problem with payment? No problem. My company is changing our routes. The supervisor looked confused. Changing to where? Back toward Earth space, Ryan said. We are focusing on different markets now. Ryan shook hands with the supervisor and returned to his ship. The Rigelian watched the New Horizon disappear into hyperspace and made a note to find a new shipping company. He did not know that 3 other human-operated cargo ships had given similar notices that same week. By the end of the month, Rigel Prime was struggling to ship their metals anywhere. The replacement cargo companies charged much higher prices and took much longer to deliver goods. The efficient shipping schedules that Ryan and other human captains had maintained were gone. On the diplomatic level, changes were happening too, but they were quiet and polite. Ambassador Paul Grant requested a transfer from his post on the Hegemony homeworld. He had been there for 6 years, helping to solve trade disputes between different species. This is unexpected, said Foreign Minister Racton. Your work here has been very effective. Why do you wish to leave? Personal reasons, Paul said. I would like to return to Earth. When will your replacement arrive? The Earth government is restructuring our diplomatic service. There may not be a replacement. Foreign Minister Racton felt a small worry in his mind, but he pushed it away. The Hegemony had managed their foreign relations for centuries before humans arrived. They could do it again, but within weeks, trade disputes that Paul used to solve, in hours, began taking months to resolve. Different species could not agree on contract terms. Arguments turned into angry confrontations. The human diplomat had possessed a strange ability to find solutions that made everyone happy. Without him, negotiations became much harder. President Helen Carter stood before the global Parliament on Earth. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from every human colony and space station. But today, the meeting was closed to outside observers. The Homecoming Initiative begins now, President Carter announced. For 50 years, we have tried to be good partners in the galaxy. We shared our knowledge freely. We helped solve problems. We tried to make friends. She paused and looked around the room. The Galactic Council has made their opinion of humanity very clear. They see us as useful servants, not as equals. They want us to clean their stations and carry their cargo, but they do not want to hear our ideas. Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Therefore, we are bringing our people home. Every human working outside Earth space will be offered positions here. Every human colony will be given the choice to join us or remain independent. We will not force anyone, but we will offer them a better future. Lisa Martinez stood up from her seat in the front row. What about our treaties and agreements with other species? She asked. We will honor all existing contracts until they expire, President Carter said, but we will not sign new ones. Humanity is withdrawing from galactic affairs. The Parliament voted on the initiative. Result was nearly unanimous in favor. Encrypted messages began traveling to human colonies throughout the galaxy. Research data from dozens of projects was quietly copied and sent back to Earth. Technologies that humans had shared with alien species were carefully studied and improved. Dr. Kevin Mills worked late in his laboratory on Altair Station. He was developing new medicines that could heal injuries much faster than anything currently available. His research was almost complete, but he had been ordered to finish it and return home. He uploaded his final test results to the Earth Medical Database. The breakthrough medicines that could have helped billions of alien beings would now only be available to humans. On Forge Prime, engineer Nancy Lee finished installing the last quantum resonance chamber in the hegemony's biggest factory. Chambers would increase production by 3 times, but they required constant adjustments that only she understood how to make. Nancy packed her tools and uploaded her work notes to Earth databases. She did not tell the hegemony engineers that the chambers would start failing within 6 months without proper maintenance. The withdrawal was carefully planned and perfectly executed. Humans completed their current work projects, but they did not start new ones. They shared their final reports, but they did not explain the complex thinking behind their solutions, Captain. Helen Morris piloted the last human research vessel out of the Vega system. Behind her, an automated beacon broadcast a simple message to any ships that might be listening. This research station is now closed. All data has been transferred. The facility is available for salvage. What the message did not say was that the research station had been developing faster than light. Communication systems that could have revolutionized galactic civilization. The research was now locked in Earth computers, protected by security systems that no alien species could break. By the 6th month after the council meeting, the last human merchant ship crossed the boundary into Earth space, the final human research station powered down its transmitters. Human diplomats closed their embassies and returned home. The exodus was complete, and it had been done without drama or violence. No threats had been made. No angry speeches had been given. Humanity had simply packed up and left. The alien species barely noticed at first. Humans had never been the loudest voices in galactic politics. Their departure seemed like a minor change in a vast and complex civilization. But in the months that followed, small problems began appearing. Equipment that humans had maintained started showing signs of wear. Trade routes that human captains had optimized became inefficient. Diplomatic relationships that human ambassadors had carefully managed began showing strain. The problems were small at first, easy to ignore or explain away as coincidence, but they were growing. 8 months had passed since the humans left. Most alien species had stopped thinking about them completely. Life in the galaxy continued as it always had, or so everyone believed. The first real problem appeared on Cernus Beta, a farming world, owned by the Zephorian Republic. The planet grew food for 12 different star systems. Millions of people depended on the crops from Cernus Beta to survive. Farm manager Colvin stood in his dying wheat field and tried to understand what was happening. The plants were turning brown and falling over. The same thing was happening across the entire continent. "This makes no sense," he told his assistant. "We are using the same seeds we have used for 20 years. It's the same fertilizer, the same water systems." The assistant, a young Zephyrian named Telok, held up a soil testing device. "The soil chemistry is wrong," Telok said. "The plants are not getting the nutrients they need, but we are using the same nutrient mixture the humans gave us years ago. Maybe we should contact the human agricultural advisors," Telok suggested. Colvin made a dismissive gesture with his long arms. "The humans are gone. We do not need them anyway.
Our people have been farming for thousands of years. But the crop..."
Failures continued to spread. Within 2 weeks, half the farming continent was showing signs of plant disease. Food prices in 12 star systems began to rise as supply dropped. Colvin finally called the Zephirian Agricultural Institute for help. The best farming experts in the Republic came to study the problem. Dr. Nexel spent 3 days testing soil and plants. His conclusion was disturbing. "The crops are genetically modified," he told Colvin. "The humans designed them to resist disease and grow in poor soil. But they also made them dependent on specific chemical treatments. We have been giving them the same chemicals for 20 years. The chemicals are not enough by themselves. The humans were also adjusting the soil pH, adding trace minerals, and timing the treatments based on weather patterns.
That was out there.
Complete system, the plants cannot survive. Colvin felt panic growing in his chest. Can you recreate their system? Dr. Nexel showed him a thick folder of human research notes. They left detailed records, but the calculations are extremely complex. It would take our best scientists months to understand how they made their decisions. The food shortage on Cernus Beta became the Republic's first crisis. But it was not the last. On Forge Prime, the hegemony's largest manufacturing world, Chief Engineer Torvik watched his production lines shut down one by one. The quantum resonance chambers that powered the factories were failing in ways he'd never seen before. The chambers created energy by vibrating at specific frequencies, but the vibrations were becoming unstable. Instead of smooth power output, the chambers produced dangerous energy spikes that damaged equipment. What is causing this? Torvik asked his technical team. Engineer Varric studied the readings on his instruments. The harmonic frequencies are drifting out of alignment. Chambers need to be recalibrated, then recalibrate them. I do not know how. The human engineers always handled the calibration procedures. Torvik felt anger building inside him. You telling me that our most important facility depends on human knowledge? The original installation manuals are in our database, Varric said carefully, but they only show which settings to use. They do not explain how the humans calculated those settings. Torvik spent the next week trying to solve the problem himself. He had 40 years of engineering experience and had designed many of the factory systems personally. But the quantum chambers used mathematical principles that seemed simple on the surface and incredibly complex underneath. Every adjustment he made caused new problems. When he increased one frequency, another would drift out of range. When he tried to stabilize the power output, the entire system would shut down for safety reasons. Production at the hegemony's most important. Factory dropped to 30% of normal levels. Thousands of workers were sent home. Orders for manufactured goods began piling up unfilled. The Altarian Science Collective faced their own disaster when their premier research ship ran into trouble during a routine exploration mission. The Enlightenment was studying a nebula near the galactic edge when their life support systems began failing. The air recycling equipment stopped working properly. Oxygen levels dropped throughout the ship. Captain Zillera ordered her crew to switch to backup life support systems. But the backup systems were not compatible with the main ship computers. This does not make sense, Chief Engineer Pelton said. The backup systems were installed 3 years ago. It worked perfectly during our tests. What is different now? Captain Zillera asked. Pelton checked his technical records. The backup systems were designed and installed by human engineers from the sole defense contractors. Our crew has never had to maintain them. Are you saying we cannot repair our own ship? The human systems use different connection standards and control protocols. Our tools cannot interface with their equipment properly. The Enlightenment was forced to abandon their research mission and return to port immediately. The trip took 2 weeks longer than planned because they had to make frequent stops to manually adjust the failing life support systems. When they finally reached Altair Station, the ship's systems were barely functional. Months of valuable research. Time had been lost, and the repair costs were enormous. Similar problems were appearing throughout the galaxy, but most species were treating them as isolated incidents. Trade routes that had operated efficiently for decades suddenly became unprofitable. The complex scheduling algorithms that human logistics experts had developed were breaking down without proper maintenance. Cargo ships arrived late, carried inefficient loads, or took dangerous routes through hazardous regions. The Crystalline Consortium lost 2 cargo vessels in 1 month when navigation. Computers sent them through unstable asteroid fields. The safety protocols that had protected ships for years had been designed with human input. Using pattern recognition that the crystal beings could not replicate, medical facilities across the galaxy began reporting unusual problems. Disease treatments that had worked for years suddenly became less effective. The human doctors and researchers who had developed many of the treatments were no longer available to adjust procedures for new situations. Chancellor Kethmer received problem reports during his daily briefings. Each one seemed like a minor issue that could be solved with time and effort. The farming problems on Cernus Beta will be resolved when our scientists finish analyzing the human procedures, his agriculture advisor reported. The manufacturing delays on Forge Prime are temporary while our engineers learn to maintain their own equipment, his industry advisor said. The shipping inefficiencies will improve once our logistics companies adjust to new management systems, his trade advisor explained. But privately, Chancellor Kethmer was beginning to feel concerned. The number of problems was growing, and they all seemed to involve areas where humans had been involved. His personal assistant, diplomatic coordinator, Yenth, approached him after one particularly difficult briefing. Chancellor, perhaps we should attempt to contact the humans, Yenth suggested carefully. Not to ask them to return, but simply to request technical consultation on some of these issues. Chancellor Kethmer's long arms moved in a gesture of irritation. We will not crawl back to them for help. These are minor technical difficulties that our own experts can solve. But the problems seem to be getting worse, not better, because our people have become lazy and dependent on human assistance. This withdrawal will force us to develop our own capabilities. In the long run, we will be stronger without them. Yenth was not convinced, but he knew better than to argue further with the Chancellor. As the months continued, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Systems that had worked smoothly for decades were failing in ways that alien engineers could not predict or prevent. The failures were not random mechanical breakdowns. They were happening in areas that required the kind of intuitive problem-solving and pattern recognition that humans had provided. The galaxy was discovering that humanity had been far more important to their civilization than anyone had realized. But the discovery was coming too late to do anything about it. 18 months after the humans left, the small problems had grown into big disasters. What started as broken machines and failed crops had become a crisis that threatened the entire Galactic Council. The worst disaster happened at Nexus Prime, the communication center for the whole galaxy. Every message between star systems passed through the massive arrays on this space station. Without Nexus Prime, planets could not talk to each other. Station Commander Vexilon watched in horror as the main communication array began tearing itself apart. Huge metal towers that had stood for 50 years were bending and breaking. Sparks flew from control panels as systems overloaded. "What is happening?" Vexilon demanded from his engineering chief. Chief Engineer Moltar studied the readouts with shaking hands. "The integration protocols are failing. The different alien technologies cannot work together anymore." This array was built by 12 different species working together and has operated perfectly for decades. "The humans designed the integration software," Moltar said quietly. "They made all our different technologies talk to each other. Without their systems, everything is fighting against everything else." Vexilon felt cold fear in his chest. "Can we repair it?" "We're trying, but every time we fix one system, 3 others break down." The humans understood how to balance all the different technologies. We do not. Within 6 hours, the main communication array collapsed completely. Metal towers crashed into the station hall, causing explosive decompression in 3 sections. 12 technicians died in the accident. The backup communication systems were much slower and could only handle a fraction of normal message traffic. Communication that used to take minutes now took days or weeks. The galactic economy, which depended on instant communication for trade and coordination, began falling apart. Emergency meetings that should have taken hours to organize now required weeks of planning. Trade deals fell through because negotiators could not talk to each other quickly enough. Military coordination became almost impossible, but the communication disaster was just the beginning. A plague outbreak started on the mining world of Titans. Rest. The disease was called red fever because it made victims' skin turn bright red before they died. It spread quickly through the mining camps and threatened. To jump to other worlds, Dr. Kethler was the head medical officer for the sector. He had dealt with disease outbreaks before, but this one was different. Red fever was killing people faster than any disease he had seen. Do we have any information about this plague? He asked his medical team. Assistant Medical Officer Yeltana searched through the medical databases. Yes, there are records of red fever outbreaks from 15 years ago. Human doctors studied it extensively and developed treatment protocols. Excellent. What is the treatment? Yeltana's expression grew worried. The treatment requires a complex mixture of drugs and therapy procedures. The human doctors left detailed notes. They do not explain how they determined the correct dosages for different species. Dr. Kethler reviewed the human medical files himself. The treatment procedures were incredibly detailed, but they assumed knowledge that the alien doctors did not possess. The humans had based their treatments on biochemical analysis techniques that seemed simple, but contained hidden complexity. We must try to recreate their treatments, Dr. Kethler decided. The alien medical teams tried their best to follow the human procedures. But without understanding the reasoning behind the treatments, they made small errors that had large consequences. Drug dosages that worked for one species proved fatal for another. Therapy procedures that helped some patients made others worse. The plague spread to 3 more worlds before it was finally contained through harsh quarantine measures. Entire cities were sealed off and left to die. The death toll reached 2 million before the disease burned itself out. If the human medical advisors had still been available, the plague could have been stopped in days with minimal casualties. The military problems started during what should have been a routine patrol mission. A joint peacekeeping fleet from 5 different species was investigating reports of pirate activity near the neutral zone. Fleet, Commander Zactor, commanded ships. From the Hegemony, the Altarian Collective, the Crystalline Consortium, the Void Wanderers, and the Zephyrian Republic. Each species had different weapons, different communication systems, and different tactical approaches. For decades, human military advisors had solved these coordination problems by developing universal tactical protocols. Different alien fleets to work together smoothly. But now those systems were failing. Target identified, reported Captain Velonis of the Altarian destroyer Swift Strike. Pirate vessel bearing 27 Mark 4. Confirmed, replied Captain Mortek of the Hegemony cruiser Iron Fist. Moving to intercept. But the 2 ships interpreted the target coordinates differently. The Altarian navigation system used different reference points than the Hegemony system, without human coordination protocols to translate between them. Ships were looking at different areas of space. The Swift Strike fired its weapons at what it thought was a pirate ship, but its targeting system had miscalculated the position. The energy beams struck the Iron Fist instead. "We are under attack," Captain Mortek shouted over the communication channel. "The Altarians are firing on us." "Negative. We are firing on the pirate vessel," Captain Velinas replied. Within minutes, the joint fleet was firing on each other instead of the pirates. 3 ships were damaged before Fleet Commander Zactor managed to stop the fighting. The real pirate ship escaped during the confusion. Second friendly fire incident happened 2 weeks later during a training exercise. This time, a Crystalline Consortium ship accidentally destroyed a Void Wanderer patrol craft, killing all 15 crew members. The joint military operations that had kept peace in the galaxy for decades were becoming too dangerous to continue. The final crisis came when the orbital defense platforms protecting the Council homeworld of Zephyr Prime began showing structural problems. Chief Engineer Ralvin studied the stress analysis reports with growing alarm. The massive platforms that protected his homeworld were developing cracks in their support structures. "How is this possible?" he asked his engineering team. "These platforms are built to last for centuries." Senior Engineer Colmack pointed to the damaged areas on his display screen. "The stress distribution is not working as designed. The platforms are carrying more weight than their support beams can handle. But the original calculations showed they could support twice their current load." "The original calculations were developed by human structural engineers," Colmack said reluctantly. "They used innovative stress distribution techniques that our people have never fully understood." Ralvin felt panic rising in his throat. "You telling me that our planetary defenses could collapse? Platforms are developing critical structural weaknesses. If they fall, they will crash into the planet's surface. The impact could kill millions of people." Emergency evacuation plans were activated across Zephyr Prime. Millions of citizens fled the areas beneath the orbital platforms. The government considered abandoning the capital city entirely. In the council chambers, the crisis reached a breaking point for the first time since the human departure. Council members began openly questioning their previous decisions. Trade Minister Volek, who had mocked human capabilities 18 months earlier, now faced his colleagues with desperation. In his voice, "We must contact Earth immediately," he demanded. "This has gone beyond politics or pride. We are facing the potential collapse of our entire civilization." The humans were dismissed from this council, Chancellor Kethmer replied, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "We must ask them to return," said Ambassador Thekra of the Altarian Collective. "Our people are dying because we cannot solve problems that the humans handled easily. We drove them away with our arrogance," admitted Science Director Nalith. "Now, we must swallow our pride and beg them to help us." Chancellor Kethmer looked around the chamber. 47 species had once filled these seats. Now barely half were present. Many had withdrawn from council activities to focus on their own survival. "Very well," the Chancellor said finally. "Attempt to establish communication with Earth. Offer them whatever terms they require." But when the council tried to contact humanity, they discovered something that filled them with new fear. All communication attempts disappeared into empty space. Earth and all human colonies had gone completely silent. 2 years had passed since the humans left the Galactic Council. The galaxy that had once dismissed humanity as primitive and emotional now faced a truth too terrible to accept. They needed humans more than humans had ever needed them. Chancellor Kethmer stood alone in his office, looking out at the half-empty council chambers through his window. Where 47 species once gathered for meetings, only 23 still attended regularly. The others had withdrawn from galactic politics to focus on their own survival. The crisis reports covered his desk, like fallen leaves. Food shortages on 12 worlds, factory shutdowns on 15 planets, communication blackouts in entire star systems, military incidents that had nearly started 3 wars, and everywhere the same problem. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were failing without human expertise to maintain them. His assistant, Diplomatic Coordinator Yenth, entered the office with another stack of reports. The latest communication attempts, Chancellor Yenth said quietly. Kethmer looked through the files. Every species had tried to contact Earth using their most advanced technology. Every message had disappeared into the void around human space. It was as if humanity had built an invisible wall around their entire region of the galaxy. "What about deep space probes?" Kethmer asked, all turned back by automated defense systems. "The technology is unlike anything in our databases. Our best. Scientists cannot understand how the human defenses work." Kethmer made a sound of frustration. The species that the Council had considered too primitive for serious discussion had created technology that surpassed anything the galaxy possessed. "Sir Yenth said carefully, "there is something else you should know." "What now?" "Archaeological. Teams have been studying the abandoned human facilities. They found is ... disturbing." Yenth activated a holographic display that showed images from deserted human research stations. The facilities looked normal from the outside, but the internal systems told a different story. The human research stations contained technology decades ahead of anything we have, Yenth explained. Medical equipment that could cure diseases we still cannot treat. Engineering designs for machines we do not understand. Scientific instruments that operate on principles our best researchers cannot explain. Kethmer stared at the images. This cannot be correct. The humans were technologically inferior to most council species. That is what they allowed us to believe, sir. But these facilities suggest that human science was far more advanced than they ever showed us. More images appeared in the hologram. Laboratories with equipment that looked like art sculptures. Computer systems with processing capabilities that dwarfed the most powerful council machines. Workshop areas with tools designed for purposes that alien engineers could not guess. But all of it is protected by security systems that resist every attempt at access, Yenth continued. The humans left behind empty shells. They took all the practical knowledge with them. A new report arrived while they were talking. Special. Investigator Moltar had completed his analysis of galactic systems integration. His findings were the most devastating yet. Chancellor Moltar began his presentation. We have discovered the true scope of human involvement in galactic civilization. They were not just contributors to our infrastructure, they were its foundation. Moltar's data showed a galaxy-wide network of human influence that no one had recognized while it existed. Every major system, every successful collaboration, every breakthrough innovation had human involvement somewhere in its development. They solved problems that our species could not even identify, Moltar explained. Their ability to see patterns, to find connections between unrelated systems, to mediate between incompatible technologies, this made them essential in ways we never understood.
Al, you were saying they were more important than we realized.
I'm saying they were the reason our civilization functioned at all, sir. Different species think in different ways. What seems logical to one species makes no sense to another. The humans had the unique ability to understand all of our different thinking patterns and find solutions that worked for everyone. Kethmer felt something cold settle in his chest. Give me an example. Trade agreements between the Crystalline Consortium and the Void Wanderers. These species have completely different concepts of time, value, and ownership. For 50 years, they have maintained profitable trading relationships. Every single agreement was negotiated with human mediators. And now they are in constant dispute. Without human mediators to bridge their different ways of thinking, they cannot even agree on what their old contracts mean. The pattern was everywhere once they looked for it. Humans had been the glue that held galactic civilization together, and no one had noticed until they were gone. The final shock came when long-range sensors detected massive ships launching from the direction of Earth. The vessels were enormous, larger than anything in Council databases. Their design was clearly human, but incorporated technologies that seemed impossible. They are heading toward the galactic edge, reported Sensor Chief Yelton.
Ow.
These ships appear designed for extended deep space exploration. How many ships? Kethmer asked. 17 confirmed, possibly more launching behind them. Each ship is large enough to carry thousands of people and enough supplies for decades of travel. The truth was becoming clear. Humanity was not hiding in their home system, waiting for the Council to apologize. They were leaving the galaxy entirely, taking their knowledge and abilities to unexplored regions of space. A transmission accompanied the fleet. Broadcast on all frequencies. This is Admiral Telsa. Lisa Martinez, of the Human Exploration Fleet. To any Council species receiving this message, humanity extends its best wishes for your future endeavors. We have determined that our approaches to galactic citizenship are fundamentally incompatible with Council philosophy. We will be pursuing our own path among the stars. We ask that you respect our decision and maintain your distance from human space. This is our final communication. Chancellor. Kethmer listened to the message 3 times. Lisa Martinez, the ambassador he had dismissed as emotional and impractical, was now commanding a fleet of ships that represented technology beyond anything the Council possessed. In desperation, he composed a message and broadcast it toward the departing human fleet. Admiral Martinez, this is Chancellor Kethmer of the Galactic Council. We acknowledge that errors were made in our past interactions. If there is any possibility of dialogue, of rebuilding what we have lost, we are prepared to discuss terms. Any terms you consider appropriate, please respond. The message joined thousands of others from different species, all begging for some form of contact. None received any response. Days passed. The human fleet disappeared beyond the edge of known space, heading into the vast, unexplored regions between galaxies. Long-range sensors lost contact with them completely. The silence that followed was more devastating than any angry words could have been. Chancellor, Kethmer sat in his empty office, surrounded by crisis reports that grew worse. Each day, outside his window, the Council chambers stood nearly empty. Species that had once worked together in harmony now struggled to communicate with each other. The agricultural worlds continued to struggle with crop failures, the manufacturing centers operated at reduced capacity. The communication networks remained unstable. Medical facilities reported new diseases they could not treat. Military cooperation had become too dangerous to continue, and somewhere beyond the galactic rim, humanity was building a new civilization among the stars, carrying with them the knowledge and skills that could have lifted the galaxy to unprecedented heights. The Galactic Council had achieved exactly what they wanted. They no longer had to listen to human concerns about environmental damage or primitive species. They no longer had to tolerate human questions about their decisions. They no longer had to share power with a species they considered inferior. But they had also lost the one thing that had made their civilization possible: the human ability to find solutions that brought different species together. The price of their arrogance was a galaxy that could no longer function without the people they had driven away. And in the vast silence of space, that price grew higher every day.